Folks, we've brought you stories of violent anti-gentrification activists in Vancouver's downtown east side. After years as Gastown's most blighted neighborhood, it's starting to see some growth. New shops, new restaurants, most important, new foot traffic. A few people want to put it to a stop, though, vandalizing all those new properties and intimidating people who own them, all for the sake of, well, they say, protecting vulnerable people. Just one problem with that. Downtown East Side has many other organizations who work for vulnerable people. They're not against entrepreneurs. They have no patience for anyone who needs violence to make the point. So we're joined by Scott Clark. He's executive director of the Alive Society. Mr. Clark, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me, Charles.
Tell us about your society and vulnerable people.
Well, we're a nonprofit, an Aboriginal nonprofit, Aboriginal Life in Vancouver Enhancement, and we really advocate for the citizens, urban Aboriginal citizens here in Vancouver, but particularly in the downtown east side.
Mr. Clark, can you just, from your own perspective, tell me what your thoughts were when this so-called anti-gentrification movement started to happen and essentially started targeting those people who are doing what they can to clean the place up, to create opportunity, to create jobs, and yes, to help vulnerable people?
Well, we've been actually working with a number of those people that are promoting that campaign, because we're also sitting on the local area planning process for the city of Vancouver in the downtown east side. So we're quite familiar with a number of the people, and certainly familiar with the issues and the tactics that they've been using over the last little while by targeting these businesses. We feel are forms of bullying and intimidation, and that they're missing the opportunity to really roll up their sleeves and do the hard work about building a healthy community, as well as nurturing healthy citizenship within the community. So we're really I'm sorry, do you have any people that you serve, that your not-for-profit serves? Do you have any of your clients and associates supporting anti-gentrification? Do they see any problem with businesses moving into the area? Well, it's a contentious issue, and ultimately what we're saying is that after 40 years of government, all levels of government creating this ghetto, it's time that we look at this in a more elevated fashion and look at what does it take to build a healthy, vibrant community. And is that what we have down here right now? And as it stands, you know, with 178 nonprofit service providers in the area, 40 in the neighboring Grandview Woodlands area, is that clearly we've got something systematically that's been gone wrong for the last 40 years. And so we're saying it's time to create a balance. It's time to look at what do the people in the community really want and or need. And one of the things that just keeps coming up, especially for Aboriginal people, is they want education, they want jobs, they want housing in safe communities throughout all of Vancouver. And so that's really, we've been butting heads with some of those groups that want to keep those vulnerable people in that particular community.
All right, you've touched on something that I think is very, very important to all of us, and that is safety and security. So I'll just ask the question this way. Is increased business, and with it the increased foot traffic, is it enhancing safety and security or taking away, adding or subtracting?
Well, I guess it depends on how you look at it, but certainly it does bring worlds together. And you know, is it safer? I would suggest it is safer, but as long as governments keep ghettoizing the neighborhood, they keep releasing people from the prisons into the downtown east side, or it becomes sort of that magnet for vulnerable populations. We're talking about people with mental health issues, people that are being released from prison, people who may have addiction issues. As long as the governments keep promoting policies that bring them into that particular area, we're creating a very unhealthy community, not just for those vulnerable populations, but for the broader community as well, particularly the young people, the children, the families, and the elders that call that downtown east side home.
I'll touch on the prison issue and early releases and the revolving door justice system. It's something we deal with a lot here on the Sun News Network in just a moment. But let me ask you about the addiction issues. Is the government right or wrong to encourage the free needle exchange, not very far from where you sit right now?
Highly contentious issue, and gone through the courts, of course. And one of the things that we've been saying is really that when we look at a particular program like the one you're speaking about, we have to look at the broader health. By implementing this needle program, are you actually helping the broader community, or are you, reinforcing more charity-like models that create dependency? And we do know one thing, is that putting everything in the downtown east side is just not sustainable. You need to develop mixed, inclusive communities, not just throughout all of Vancouver, but literally throughout all of the Lower Mainland. And you can't have that magnet-like force that we currently have, and the push and pull variables that bring these vulnerable people down there.
All right, so you're telling us, I think, pretty clearly here tonight, and you're certainly not a member of any kind of anti-progressive movement. You're very much a progressive, that while people's hearts may be in the right place and all of those things, a magnet is a magnet is a magnet. It's a magnet for people who have addiction issues. In the 30 seconds that we have left, what's your message to the provincial and the federal governments on the revolving door justice system that your area is having to deal with?
We've got enough evidence that it doesn't work, and we are promoting what we call a place-based strategy, very comprehensive, where we bring together all the service groups, various levels of government, and the business community, schools, community centers, and really how do we comprehensively work together around supporting vulnerable people so that they can stand on their own. And that's really what we need the feds in the province to do, is step up and start working with communities that are trying to do that kind of work.
Mr. Clark, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's been most enlightening. Good luck to you and the members in your community.
Thank you kindly.